Well, I think that's important. You know, oftentimes people get sort of tied up in knots and they think that they're trapped. And eventually you have to say, at the end of my life, am I going to be happy with the way I lived it or not? And if you look back and say, based on everything I know, if I stay here in Salt Lake, I can't be happy and I can't have a fulfilling life, that's a pretty strong signal. You know, and what that is addressing those high-level things. Okay? So let me try another. Tell me why the 7,500 thing is different.
Why is it difficult?
Yeah.
Because it's an excellent opportunity. I could put it off. I mean, you know, I could use it later. There's kind of a time crunch on it. It's an educational week-long training. Basically, like you get it's like an MBA. I mean, I already have an MBA, but it'd be like getting another one in 1 week from all these high-level mentors and amazing things. Probably put together a group of people who could help fund my dream, like launch my own company. And I wasn't quite ready for it. I don't know. I mean,
It was tossed at you.
it was.
And now you're reacting.
It's something I want. And is this, okay, there's also another thing with my decision making. I have faith and I believe in things like destiny. So then I'm like, okay, is this a message? This is something I need to do. Because when I listen to messages like that, good things happen, and sometimes when I ignore them, bad things happen. So how do you make room for that? And no, I'm all on board with a really structured model like this. I like to keep room for both types of decision making.
So I want to address for the start, was the 7,500 a message specifically for you? But the question for me is not, is the real decision, do I spend $7,500 for this week of training? Because why would you do that? It would make sense if you can start your own business. Probably wouldn't make sense if you're not. Is that correct or incorrect?
No, I mean, the support that you get over your career, even if it's just a job with the network that you would get, it's worth the money.
See, if it's worth it in either case,
yeah.
whether you start your own business or whether you don't, it's a much simpler decision.
Mm-hmm.
Then you don't have to argue about, well, should I leave my current thing and be an entrepreneur? Because, this is an example of uncertainty in the future. You know, uncertainty in the future. If it turned out that this only makes sense if you're an entrepreneur, you would have to decide before investing in this course, do I want to be an entrepreneur or not? If I do, step one is to attend this training. And the do I want to be an entrepreneur is before you go to the training. On the other hand, if the training would make sense and justify the $7,500, even if you stay in your current job through better networking and better opportunities, you don't have to decide are you going to be an entrepreneur before taking that course. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. In fact, actually, by taking it, you might get a broader perspective. It might give you, be more of a business type thing. It might give you some more ideas about starting it. So that flip-flops, that decision now, do you be an entrepreneur or not, can be taken afterwards. You certainly don't have to agonize about it ahead of time.
But she may decide she doesn't even want to, after being exposed like that, she doesn't want to become an entrepreneur and just continue her present course.
Yeah, I would imagine if it's good training, you're gonna realize some things about yourself while you go through that week, which will put you in a better decision to say, am I really ready to quit my job and become an entrepreneur?
So I guess my question is, do you have $7,500 to spend?
That's the thing.
I think that might be part of the thing. Some people who have MBAs have $7,500 that they think they can just spend. Others who might be residents might have fewer $7,500 sitting around.
But see, now we're getting to a much simpler problem. If the problem is as much as I want to do this thing and it will be good for me and I think the value is higher than the cost, then it's a relatively easy decision to say, okay, I want to attend. Now my decision is, how do I fund it? And if it turns out, geez, I just can't get the money, I can't fund it, I can't borrow it, I don't have it saved up. It may be, then you say, well, it was the right thing to do, but it's just not the right time, so I can't put it together. Okay? But I would argue that the decision on, can I come up with $7,500 for something I want to do, is a way simpler decision than, should I be an entrepreneur or should I keep my current job? Would you agree or disagree?
Agree.
Okay? So sometimes when you look at these decisions, they're not all big decisions. They're not all life-changing decisions. Sometimes it's just you want to replace the carpet. That's all you want to do. You don't want to worry about moving to Montana. Yes, please.
So often the decisions that we struggle with will affect people around us who maybe shouldn't have voting rights. I'm thinking specifically of decisions that might impact children or decisions that might affect parents, you know, I think somebody mentioned, should I be closer to my parents? And so I'm just curious if you have any guidance on, or is that something that you just have to go, I just don't know, if the benefit to this person is enough that it should sway these other
Here's what I think you might want to think about that. As long as you separate out, do they get voting rights? I'm happy to give someone a column, who are the players, what do they want? But recognize they may not get a vote, because I'll want to take, even if I'm not going to give Nina a vote as to where we live, Harriet's mom, I want to take her desires into account. She's not going to get a vote, she's not going to have a veto, but I'm going to
She
consider
is
that.
gonna go to handicapped accessible, gets better.
Yeah. That's the
There you
thing.
go.
But let's talk about kids. So when we were in, we have one daughter, Eileen. When she was in 4th grade, Harriet got the offer to move out here to Utah. And the question becomes, for a 4th grader, do they have voting rights? Okay, do we have to engage Eileen ahead of time? What we decided was, at that point, no. Eileen is not yet to the point, no kid really wants to move. Eileen is not at the point, at 10 years of age, she's not yet ready to make an informed choice if this is the right thing or not. Now, her response was, when we told her, oh, you know, a lot of people want Harriet to work for her, and she's got a wonderful offer, we're going to move to Utah. Her first response was, I'm too old to start over. Her second response is, well, we'll stay here and we'll come visit you once a month.
She thought it was very great that her mom
Yeah.
was being offered a new job. That was,
Yeah.
Mom was like, that's fantastic. I'm so glad your career is going so well.
But now let's fast forward a little bit. So but now, a year afterwards, she said, now I'm a Utah girl, I can't believe I live in California, happy to be here. But now, Eileen is a 16-year-old, a senior in high school, and she's looking at colleges. And I gotta tell you, I don't know if I'm in the smallest group at the lowest level, such if they collectively agree that I'm likely to be overruled. I don't know if that's Harriet, Eileen, and myself, or if it's just Eileen. I'm sort of thinking maybe it's just Eileen. We're involved in it. We're gonna pay for it. At least your undergrad. So that's a big financial decision. But we told her we'll pay for it wherever you go, as long as it's one of these pretty good schools. So we will be involved. We'll be affected. But when it comes down to it, should I be able to overrule Eileen or have a vote even? When it comes down to that, I think now at 16 and a senior and having done pretty darn well in her career so far, I think she's at the level where she can handle that responsibility, and I don't think Harry and I have that much to add to it. We had our input along the way. We took her to see some colleges. We've talked about things, but in the end, I don't think we're the smallest group of those. I think it's just Eileen. So I think that's now the tables have turned. Yeah.
It sounds like you already gave yourself ultimate veto power. If you don't think it's a high-quality school, you're not going to pay.
All of the schools that she's looking at, each of them meet the criteria. If she decides that she wants to take a year off, she started early. So when you think of alternatives, her alternatives are, well, she wants a small liberal arts college where it's cold. She's looking at Middlebury and Bowdoin and Bates and these very nice schools. Well, so you could say, well, she has choices about schools. She also has a choice. She's only 16. We started way early in school. She could take 2 years off and do something else. I didn't travel until I was like 22 years old, my first plane flight. I caught up for it after that. I would love to have traveled earlier on. Maybe that's what she should do, and then go. Would we fund that? I don't know. She brought it up to us, she made a case for mine. So right now, the momentum is she's going to choose from one of these very top schools, and if she gets in, we'll pay for it. Although, if she gets a lot of scholarship, Harry and I are getting a Tesla. So it depends on exactly how much she gets from the school. Okay? Any other? Very good questions. Yes, please.
Well, I was just going to make a comment on this thing, family and friends. I don't necessarily think they get a vote, but I think what does have to factor into your decision is, how does it make you feel?
Yeah.
Like, no, mom doesn't get a vote, but if you never get to see mom, or if mom gets cancer and dies while you're away, how are you going to feel about that?
I think it's perfectly valid.
And as a person with an aging parent who had a PE a couple weeks ago, and lives in North Carolina, kind of by herself, she has a grad student who lives with her in her little home. I would much rather have her where I can put her in my hospital I hate this having her in some other hospital that I have to go fly to North Carolina all the time. So there is some decision-making component there. She's not as, I can tell her what to do. Turns out she doesn't know what to do.
So from Nina's point of view, Harriet is not the smallest group at the lowest level about where Nina's gonna live. Not yet. Maybe another couple of years if she gets more infirm, maybe Harriet does become, and we all face that with our elder parents. Some days we start to make the decisions for them. But let me give you an example of the worst decision-making I've ever had the experience of. On average, when I look at a whole room full of people like this, the worst decisions I've seen in my entire career were the ones made by my MBA classmates when they took their first jobs. They all went, they went to this MBA program, they shifted jobs into these, and they all took jobs that impressed their classmates. And so they went to Goldman Sachs, they went to McKinsey, they went to all these very high-end, fancy places, so it's the equivalent of Stanford or Harvard in academics. And they all did it because it really impressed their friends. But you know what? They never saw their friends again. Or maybe they saw them once at a 20-year reunion for an evening dinner. And what happens to MBAs? They quit their jobs after 2 or 3 years and move on to something else. Why did they do that? Because they took the wrong job in the first place, because they took the jobs that their friends wanted them to take and that would impress their friends. They gave their friends some of that decision-making authority, way too much. And they didn't stop and ask the tough question, what do I want to do with my life? And in fact, if they took something other than investment banking or high-powered management consulting, they were, geez, what's wrong with that person? They got looked at sort of odd. Why did you come to this school if you're just going to take a job like that? You could have gone anyplace. So I think, when I think about decisions, I do think about my friends and family. I think about, do I want to be the kind of person who would go and then not, be so far away from my parents, etc. But there are some trade-offs we all have to make. All right? And at the current time, for Nina and my parents, we're willing to live in different cities. Will that ever change? Maybe, maybe not. Because part of my life is about my parents, but part of it's about my daughter, part of it's about Harriet, part of it's about me. Okay? If we all say we must do whatever is best for our parents only, then we are not optimizing our lives, we're optimizing one piece of our lives. Yes, please.
Unfortunately, a lot of decisions that we have to make, the relevant factors are unknown at this time.
Yep.
If you decide that you're gonna retire today, you don't know if the portfolio that you have right now will sustain you. You just don't know.
Yep.
You can do Monte Carlo simulations all you want, but disasters do happen. And if they happen immediately after you retire, you're in trouble.
Yes.
Or you can decide, well, I really want to travel, but I want to keep practicing, I'm going to do locum tenens. But then you're putting yourself in a situation where you don't know exactly how that's going to work out. It's hard to get the information on some things because it's not available.
But here's the beauty, and I absolutely agree, it's unknowable how much money is enough to let you live the life you want to live until you pass on. No one can answer that. You can have actuarial tables and other stuff, but there's uncertainty attached. But if you agree, yes, that is an uncertainty, it's unknowable, but it affects me, you can start thinking about, well, what contingency plans could I do? So if you decide to retire today, you're not really deciding to retire today. What you're saying is, I'm not going to work for a year, and then after a year I'll see what happens. If it turns out your retirement account is cratered, you may be forced, in a way you hoped it would never happen, to go back to work. So if you say, I'm retiring today, that doesn't mean you'll never work a day in your life. It means I'm going to stop working now, I'm going to try and live off my savings, and as long as those savings hold up, that's what I'm planning on doing. But if something catches your eye, or you have a financial crisis, you need to go back, a later decision 2 years from now, you go back. So what does that say? That says don't burn your bridges, keep your license valid. If it costs you a few $100 to buy flexibility to move back into a high-paying job should you need to do it, boy, keep that open. But for less than $1,000, you can probably protect yourself against the need of going back to work. Now you might say, I don't want to go back to work, I've done enough. I just want to retire and I want the money to last. Well, you can want that, but it may not happen. Okay? So separate out what you can control, which are your decisions, and what you can't control, which are uncertainties. You could control today to prepare yourself so that you're well positioned if you ever have to come back in, and to stop working now. And then you can see how long that lasts. Okay? You can't say, I'm going to stop working now and I'm going to control that I will never have to work again, because that is an uncertainty. But what I wouldn't do is, if you feel like you're ready to retire, if you feel like what you've done in this part of your life is sufficient, and you're ready to move on and realize the other passions you have outside of work, I wouldn't wait on that because, geez, I'm not sure if my retirement money will hold out. Because you can always go back to work. You may not like it, but you can do it. And I would argue I'd rather face the 30% chance of having to go back to work and the 70% chance now of being able to finally do what work has prevented me from doing all these years, whatever that happens to be.
So you talked about the weakest link being kind of a determining factor, but so you've got two decisions that seem pretty equal.
Yep.
Do you ever have one of those particular factors that maybe weigh out if they seem pretty equal? You know,
If you have two things that are pretty equal, don't worry about it. They're equal. So if I say, well, geez, it's pretty equal if I stay here and move to Cleveland, I could agonize over it, but for the equal, it doesn't matter. Flip a coin. Actually, the best way to do it is flip a coin, and if you're happy, move to Cleveland. If you're unhappy and you want to do 2 out of 3, stay here. It's actually, flipping a coin is actually a great way to bring your gut feel into play. Because I'm thinking about Cleveland, so I can't decide, but I flip a coin, heads I go to Cleveland, I flip it heads, I say, oh man. I really want to go, I really want to stay in Salt Lake. Okay. Now, I've got copies of my book is a strategy book for business, but there are 2 chapters, chapters 4 and 7, they're just on decision making. So it's basically the stuff we've talked about tonight.
And
So if
the rest
anyone
of
who
them are
wants
actually quite interesting, even if you're not.
So anyone who wants a copy, I'll sign it for you up here, just to give away. The publisher gives you a bunch to give away, so happy to do it. And I hope you all make the best decisions you possibly can. Thank you very much.
What's ironic is that